Hey everyone, welcome to the video. Today we're diving deep into the leader tier list for Civilization 7. If you're new to the game, you should know that the leaders you pick can make or break your strategy. And here's the thing, it's not just about how powerful their bonuses are on paper. When you pair a leader with the right civilization, that's when the magic really happens. So, while this tier list ranks leaders based on their individual strengths, the real fun begins when we start factoring in their civilizations. It's a dynamic system that shifts how you play, making each game feel fresh and challenging. Now, before we get into the specifics, let's make one thing clear. This tier list is built around single-player deity difficulty. That means we're talking about how these leaders perform when you're going for the toughest challenges in the game. But hey, multiplayer is a whole different beast. The meta in multiplayer can really shake things up, and leaders that might shine in single player might need a little extra strategy when facing off against real players. So, grab your map, get comfy, and let's explore which leaders are dominating the game right now. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking leaders in Civilization 7. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
My friends, only 0.1% of viewers subscribe. If you like this type of content, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you in advance for your support.
The leaders in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Xerxes Archimenid, Napoleon Emperor, Friedrich Baroque, and Pachacuti. Alright, let's get into it. You know those leaders in Civilization 7 that seem like they should be good, but just don't quite hit the mark? Yeah, we're talking about the C tier leaders, the ones that, despite their potential, often fall short when it comes to reliability and strategy. So, grab your popcorn because we're about to dive into the ones that might not be your go-to picks. First up, we have Xerxes Archimenid. Now, Xerxes sounds pretty cool, right? I mean, the guy is a king after all. But his trade-focused playstyle is honestly a bit of a letdown. His bonus gives you +1 trade route limit with all other civilizations, which sounds good in theory. But here's the catch, trade routes can be pretty unreliable, especially on higher difficulty levels where the AI is just looking for reasons to declare war on you. So, those sweet trade routes you were counting on? Yeah, they get shot down real quick. Plus, the 50 culture and 100 gold you get from completing trade routes or building roads, it's not enough to turn things around when you're under constant attack. Then, there's Napoleon Emperor, and oh boy, Napoleon's got a lot of potential but feels very restricted. His unique ability, the Continental System, lets you shut down trade routes from enemy civilizations one at a time. Sounds great until you realize that on higher difficulties, you're basically a target for every AI in the game. The gold you get from being hostile with other civilizations is nice, but it's not going to save you when you're constantly dealing with enemy troops at your gates. You'll get some gold every age, but it's just not enough to support a massive army when you need it most. Talk about a rough start. Next on the list, we have Friedrich Baroque. He's an interesting one, but again, his abilities don't quite mesh well. You get a great work whenever you conquer a settlement, and you gain an infantry unit when you build a culture building. The problem here is simple. Military and culture don't always go hand in hand. If you're focused on culture, you'll want to use your production for buildings and wonders, not for cranking out troops. It makes his bonuses feel like they're in direct competition with your overall strategy. Sure, you can do an early military rush, but it's slow, and let's be honest, it's not as effective as it sounds. Now, Tecumseh is a fun one, but boy, he really requires some luck to pull off. His bonuses are all about suzerainty with city-states, and when they work, they really work. You get +1 food and production for each city-state you're suzerain of, which can be a massive boost. But here's the kicker, the AI loves snatching up city-states before you can even get a foothold. And don't even get me started on military civilizations. They'll wipe those city-states off the map without hesitation. Plus, with fewer city-states in Civilization 7, it's harder than ever to really make Tecumseh shine. If you're lucky though, he can be an absolute powerhouse. Next, let's talk about Pachacuti. This one's tough because Pachacuti can actually be amazing if you get a mountain start. The guy is all about mountains, though his bonuses are tied to having mountains nearby. You get +1 food adjacency for mountains and no specialist cost to happiness for specialists next to mountains. But if you don't start with mountains, yeah, that's a huge problem. You can't really make use of his abilities, and suddenly you're left with a leader that feels pretty useless. So, unless you're blessed with a mountain start, Pachacuti can feel like a leader you're stuck with rather than one you chose. It's honestly a shame because Pachacuti could be one of the most powerful leaders if the conditions were right. But unfortunately, the game doesn't always play along, and you can easily end up with a leader that's just kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen. And let's be real, waiting around in Civilization 7 can sometimes feel like you're missing out on more reliable options. These leaders may sound like they're just not worth your time, and in some ways, that's true. Their playstyles are too specific, or they rely on conditions that don't always align with the chaotic world of Civilization 7. But hey, if you're the kind of player who loves a challenge and isn't afraid to play the long game, these leaders might be worth considering. Just know that they require a bit more effort to make work, and sometimes that's not always the most fun way to play. So, what do you think? Are any of these leaders worth trying out, or are you better off looking for something a bit more reliable? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The leaders in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Trung Trac, Napoleon Revolutionary, Harriet Tubman, Xerxes King of Kings, Amina, Himiko Queen of War, Friedrich Oblique, Ibn Battuta, Lafayette, and Ashoka, World Renouncer. Alright, let's dive into some of the leaders that sit right in the sweet spot of the B tier in Civilization 7. They're not quite game-breaking, but they still have some serious potential when played right. These leaders might require a little extra finesse to really get the most out of their abilities, but that's exactly what makes them so fun. First up, we have Trung Trac, and oh boy, she's an early game powerhouse. She starts strong with her army commanders getting +3 promotions immediately. If you're a fan of strong, durable army commanders that stick with you across ages, Trung Trac's your gal. But here's where it gets spicy. Her bonuses double when she declares formal wars. This is where her scientific potential comes into play. If you're skilled at diplomacy and can tick off your neighbors, you can use these wars to boost your science output like crazy. Just be careful, keeping those enemies hostile can sometimes be a tricky balancing act. Next, let's talk about Napoleon the Revolutionary. Now, Napoleon's all about military movement and culture, a bit of a weird mix, but one that works surprisingly well. He gives all land units Plahol 1 movement, which, trust me, can make a huge difference in Civ 7 where unit movement can feel painfully slow at times. And don't forget, he gets 50% of the culture cost of defeated units. It's a fun combination that can easily lead you to a strong military culture hybrid strategy. Then there's Harriet Tubman, who is definitely a leader for those who like to get their hands a little dirty in espionage. She's got a 100% influence boost on espionage actions, so you can wreak havoc on your opponent's empire by stealing tech, causing food shortages, and more. But her defensive perks are no joke either. You get +5 war support when someone declares war on you. This means you can settle aggressively, turtle up, and basically let your enemies destroy themselves while you build your empire from the inside out. It's a fun, sneaky playstyle, but it requires patience. Xerxes, King of Kings, is another military-focused leader who brings a lot to the table. His bonuses aren't just situational, they're everywhere. He gets +3 combat strength for units in neutral or enemy territory, an extra 100 culture and gold when capturing settlements, and +10% gold in all settlements. On top of that, he even gets an extra settlement limit per age. If you're a fan of pushing aggressively and expanding, Xerxes is a strong contender. Amina is the perfect leader if you can get a solid trade network going. Her bonuses are based on trading and diplomacy, and if you can maintain friendly relationships with your neighbors, Amina guarantees a smooth economic victory. She gives +1 resource capacity in cities and 1 gold per resource slotted in cities, which is a major economic boost. But, and this is key, if you don't manage your diplomacy and trade routes well, her strategy falls apart. Himiko, Queen of War, might sound like a tricky leader to play, but if you can manage your relationships, she can be downright explosive. Her unique bonus, Friend of Way, grants a massive 25% science boost to you and your ally, stacked multiple times if you have more alliances. Add to that +4 science per age for every friendly leader, and you're looking at a potential science powerhouse. The trick is, though, getting those friendly relationships to work in your favor. It's not always easy, but when it clicks, it's beautiful. And lastly, we've got Friedrich Oblique. This guy has a few cool quirks, like giving his commanders the merit commendation for free, which expands their command radius. But overall, his bonuses aren't exactly jaw-dropping. A free infantry unit when building a science building is nice, but it doesn't stack up to the heavy hitters. Still, if you're looking for a more laid-back, tactical approach to war and science, Friedrich can make for a fun ride. So there you have it, some of the B-tier leaders in Civ 7. They're not the best of the best, but with the right strategy, they can definitely shine. Whether you're diving into diplomacy, espionage, or just waging war, these leaders offer unique ways to play the game. The leaders in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Machiavelli, Benjamin Franklin, Catherine the Great, Ashoka World Conqueror, and Jose Rizal. Alright, so let's dive right into some of the A-tier leaders in Civilization 7, the ones that might not be outright unstoppable, but definitely pack a punch when used the right way. These leaders can shine when their abilities align with your playstyle, making them a ton of fun to experiment with. First up, let's talk about Machiavelli. The guy is a straight-up diplomatic genius. Influence is a game changer, and Machiavelli's got it in spades with +3 influence per age, but it doesn't stop there. Every diplomatic action you make, whether accepted or rejected, nets you a hefty chunk of gold. 50 gold if they agree, 100 if they reject. And gold, as we know, is a powerhouse, especially early in the game. Now, if you're playing multiplayer, Machiavelli can drive your opponents crazy. They'll have to play their diplomatic moves carefully because every wrong choice just hands you a nice little bonus. It's a blast to watch, honestly. Next, we've got Benjamin Franklin, who's like a science and production powerhouse rolled into one. He gets +1 science on production buildings and an amazing 50% production boost to those same buildings. The cherry on top, he gets +1 science per age from active endeavors, with the ability to double up on endeavors at the same time. This flexibility means you can stack your science without slowing down your production. You can go all in on your production buildings and still rocket ahead in the science race. It's that perfect balance that makes Franklin a top tier pick for any strategy. Now, Ashoka the World Conqueror. He's all about chaining celebrations, and let me tell you, celebrations in this game are wild. He gets +1 production for every 5 happiness in his cities, plus an extra 10% production in cities he didn't found. So, what's his game plan? Declare war on everyone. Every war declaration triggers a celebration, which leads to crazy bonuses like extra unit production, science, culture, gold, you name it. The only catch is, managing happiness can be tricky. And if you don't keep it in check, Ashoka's power could fizzle out. But if you nail it, well, you've got yourself a war machine that's also an economic powerhouse. Catherine the Great is one of those leaders you might not think much of at first, but once you get a Tundra start, she's a force to be reckoned with. She gets +2 culture per age on great works, and any buildings with a great work slot get an extra slot. Cities on Tundra get science equal to 25% of their culture per turn. That's a nice little science boosting machine if you can lock down the Tundra. Her ability to combine culture and science is next level, especially when you're aiming for a culture victory in the modern age. But here's the thing, she's a bit dependent on where your settlements are located. If you get a great Tundra start though, she's a real beast in the late game. Then there's Jose Rizal, who's all about celebrations too, like seriously, he lives for them. Every narrative event he gets boosts his culture and gold by 20. And his celebrations are straight up juiced with a 50% boost to happiness and 50% more time. With celebrations giving you massive boosts to culture, science, and other areas, Rizal can push you ahead in multiple victory conditions. His versatility is what makes him such a fun pick. Whether you're gunning for culture, science, or something else, he's got the tools to make it work. The beauty of these A-tier leaders is that they offer a lot of strategic depth. They're not quite as straightforward as the S-tier legends, but with the right moves, they can be just as devastating. Machiavelli's gold-making genius, Franklin's unbeatable synergy of science and production, Ashoka's war celebrations, Catherine's Tundra's science, and Rizal's celebration domination all make for incredibly diverse strategies. It's all about playing to their strengths and tweaking your approach depending on the map and what you're up against. So if you're looking to have some fun and experiment with different tactics, these A-tier leaders are definitely worth your time. They might not always be the easiest to play, but mastering them, that's where the magic happens. And trust me, once you get the hang of it, you'll be riding high with these guys in no time. The leaders in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Hatshepsut, Confucius, Augustus, Himiko Haishama, Charlemagne, and Isabella. Alright, buckle up, because we're diving into the real heavy hitters of Civilization 7, the S-tier leaders that just dominate every game. These guys aren't just good at one thing, they're versatile powerhouses that can play every victory condition like a fiddle. Let's get into it. First up, we've got Hatshepsut. Now this lady is a cultural powerhouse. Imagine this, every imported resource gives you an extra +1 culture. That's like a passive culture bomb going off across your empire every time you trade. And if you settle next to a navigable river, you're basically in heaven. These rivers already give you a solid mix of food, production, and gold. But with Hatshepsut's bonus, those cities become total production factories for wonders and buildings. Sure, early on, if you don't get that river start, she might feel a bit less powerful, but trust me, she can still win you a cultural or economic victory while keeping other options open. Next, we've got Confucius. And let me tell you, he is the definition of overpowered. A 25% growth boost to cities and +2 science from specialists? That's like giving your cities a jetpack. With these bonuses, your empire can grow quickly and your science output will skyrocket. And when you pair him with the Han dynasty, you've got a recipe for rapid expansion and devastating military defense thanks to the Choco Nu. So yeah, Confucius doesn't just keep up, he leaves the competition in the dust. Augustus is another top tier pick and he's all about that rapid expansion. With his bonus of +2 production in the capital for every town you build, you'll quickly turn your capital into a powerhouse. His ability to purchase buildings with +50% gold in towns means you can get up and running faster than most other leaders. Plus, with his versatility across wind conditions, you'll always be able to adapt, whether you're going there for domination, science, or culture. He's like a Swiss army knife of leadership. If you're after a cultural victory, then Himiko Hai Shaman is your go-to. She does have that pesky 10% science penalty, but don't let that fool you. She's a culture machine. The +2 happiness per age on happiness buildings is solid on its own, but throw in the 50% production boost to those buildings, and you've got a civilization that's pumping out culture at a terrifying pace. And the cherry on top? Her 20% extra culture, doubled during celebrations. Celebrations are already huge, and Himiko takes full advantage of them, making your civilization a cultural juggernaut. Now, let's talk about Charlemagne. If you've played against him, you know exactly how terrifying he can be. He gets 2 free cavalry units every time you enter a celebration, which means he's constantly churning out military power. And those cavalry units, they get +5 combat strength in celebrations, so not only are you getting free units, but they're also insanely strong. Combine that with the extra adjacency bonuses for military and science quarters, and Charlemagne becomes an unstoppable force, especially when paired with the Mongolian CIV. By the time you hit the modern age, you're rolling with a massive empire, crushing everyone in your path. Isabella from Spain is another S-tier legend. And let's be real, her natural wonder synergy is borderline broken. If you manage to get a natural wonder near your capital, congratulations, you're basically set. Her ability to double tile yields from natural wonders gives you a massive advantage in the early game. And the 300 gold reward for discovering a new natural wonder, that's like getting a free head start. With this kind of bonus, you can build up a solid economy while simultaneously working towards a cultural victory. Spain's natural wonder buffs make her a top contender for any game. And last, but definitely not least, Genghis Khan. You want a leader who can dominate the map with military power? Khan's your guy. His bonus to cavalry units makes him an absolute nightmare. And when you mix that with his ability to spread fear and loyalty with his powerful units, you'll find yourself steamrolling opponents. He's a perfect mix of aggression and strategy. Just watch your enemies crumble as you march across the map, claiming victory after victory. So, there you have it. These leaders are the ones that will take you to the top in Civilization 7. Whether you're after a cultural, military, or scientific victory, these S-tier leaders can handle it all with style. So, who's your pick to rule the world? The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.